Hello, I'm Sean Fogarty, and we're here today in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, visiting GetBlok Farms. We're going to meet with the owner, Vinnie Lima, and he's going to give us an overview of the farm and what they do for produce safety.
GetBlok Farms started as a technology company focusing on ag tech. So what we wanted to do is to bring the best, latest technology in a form factor that allowed urban farming into communities that need. And communities that need, it's kind of multiple factors. One is food deserts who traditionally don't have access to fresh food. And two, an economic benefit for the labor workforce and also a circular economy. So be able to hire locally, mentor locally, train locally, grow a talent into this ag tech field into communities that traditionally would never be exposed to it. Right? So that was the mission, be able to drive innovation, drive fresh food, and drive kind of an economic incentive for a labor workforce. And so what we've done here with GetBlok Farms is, do we reinvent the wheel and create our own? Or do we look at innovators in the US who have already solved a lot of the problems of vertical farming and controlled environment agriculture, and then build on top of that? And that's where we came across Freight Farm. So we use the farms, the latest generation grain ureas from Freight Farms, based out of Boston, as a starting factor for us to what we do. And then what we've done is we developed the operational process and procedures, as well as our own intellectual property on top of the form factor to allow us to grow commercially and repeatably, right? And so over the past 2 years, we got familiar with the repeatable processes that we have to put in place to make these work commercially. And now we started to develop our own IP around full traceability, crop lifecycle management, introducing artificial intelligence into asking questions around how can we grow the crops most consistently and most efficiently to our customers, and then be able to scale that model farm after farm after farm after farm. So that's what GetBlok Farms. Now, so it's a layered approach, right? So we look at the risks, especially with a controlled environment. There's different risks than traditional farming. Some risks we don't have to deal with. There's some risks we do have to deal with, right? And it's all different, but somewhat the same. So we look at it from what are the attack vectors for a crop that are both risks to the crop, but also risks to food safety and human safety, right? So we start with our inputs. So even though we could use municipal water for our farm, directly into our farm, we don't. This farm here has no outside connection, no plumbing to outside water input, only electricity. What we do is we took municipal water and we put it through a reverse osmosis triple stage filtering system plus UV treatment. Why? For two factors. One, for safety, because the municipal water may have issues that we won't see until downstream, but also it allows us to have a cleaner baseline, a consistent baseline to how we layer on top nutrients, right? So we solve a couple problems there from inputs. Supplier safety, so we only use certified or verified supplier for even down to our nutrients. So we don't experiment with nutrients from all kinds of different providers who are very strict on who we get our nutrients from. And then the human aspect, right? So we put most, if not all, we try to put all of our employees through a ServSafe certification as a baseline, because it provides a lot of foundational concepts of food safety. And then we go producer grower certification training, and then we look at what other risks. When in the farm here, especially in an enclosed environment, it's very easy to bump into a crop, right? So that's why we wear these overalls, to kind of minimize transferring things that we may bring from outside into the farm, right? Water testing, so we do quarterly water testing from both our tanks and our water treatment facility with Penn State, so that way we can check, is there a potential issue quarterly that we have to address. We do also ATP testing for surface testing for the bacterial level of anything that we do in the farm, and we do for our cleaning procedures are being followed? Are they not being followed? Is it efficient? Are disinfectants, are they efficiently for the mixture level, right? And so these are the layered approach that we try to implement, but then we're also looking consistently at continuing improvement. So we cycle these panels periodically, probably more frequently than Freight Farm recommend, way more frequent Freight Farm recommend, because that reduces the risk of things growing and developing that may be a food safety problem, right? So that's what we try to do, but it's always improving. Freight Farm does a great job in setting some foundational things. They create great curriculum for maintenance schedules. But as a commercial grower, it's really up to you to define what is acceptable for you. And what I've discovered is that the bar for food safety is not as high as I like it to be. And so we kind of layered our own approaches that we feel has long-term benefit and as well as has long-term rate of minimizing risk. So we grow 4 varieties. We grow lettuce, leafy greens, herbs, roots. We ever had a period we were growing edible flowers. So we always try to grow something unique within those categories, from traditional red leaf or romaine to leafy greens like our arugula, to roots like we grow Hakuri turnips, Parisian carrots. Because of the form factor, we also are limited to what we can grow, but also we look at the market opportunity being that we can grow year round. So we try to be contrarian, right? Grow more when there's less in the market and grow less when it's more in the market, if that makes sense. But we're always growing lettuce, leafy greens, herbs, and roots. Gianna here actually manages our crop scheduling. So she does a lot of the planning of capacity, what can we grow, what we need to grow, start using that data to determine predictively how much yield we're going to get every week from any crop in here. So we can adjust so that way we're growing just in time as much as possible. The nursery is kind of a cute name because we seed everything. We grow everything from seeds. So here there are 16 trays of 288 cells where we use this specific peat moss derivative plug for growing until it gets developed into a seedling. And then once it gets to a certain point, it then gets transplanted into what you see here, which is a cultivation area, okay? We're seeding every week. We transplant every week. The nursery system is independent from the cultivation system, meaning that it has its own water system. Everything is controlled via software, okay? And the software controls all aspects of environmental as well as dosing frequency, automatic sensors for both the nursery and the cultivation on pH level and EC levels. And based on software, as they get to a certain level and it's read real time, it will automatically dose the combination and mixture of our nutrients, as well as pH down, for example, if the pH level gets too high. So we use software and technology to kind of maintain not only the right chemistry, but also the irrigation schedule. So the nursery is a different irrigation schedule than the cultivation, and then what happens is, based on the crop and what's called a recipe, if we're growing herbs, we may not water it as frequent as we do lettuce and leafy greens on the other farm. So that's all controlled software-wise, including what you see here is the light intensity. I'll turn one of these on just so you can get an idea. So these are high efficiency LED panels. They're manufactured specifically for this form factor, and it's blue and red intensity light, so you know about the blue and red light spectrum. But the software allows us to control not only the daily light intensity, but also the red and blue mixture based on the crop. So for a specific crop, we can change what that intensity is. We can do it by each side. We've separated the farm because of climate to have different climate for herbs versus the leafy greens. So we kind of do it by farm versus trying to do too much in one farm. We did that initially. It did really well, but we kind of like to separate it to keep it more precise. Sometimes we have 3 or 4 people in a farm, and they're harvesting. Sometimes you have somebody harvesting on the panel, sometimes harvesting on the nursery table. They're packaging. And because, again, one of the things from the food safety that I did mention, we try to isolate any potential risk downstream in the supply chain from us producing it to selling it, that every product is packaged inside this farm. So you leave sealed. So we're not having to then risk it being handled loosely. Very, very few exceptions we handle produce loosely at our HQ. We try to package everything for retail, for wholesale customers, if it's chefs, if it is for reselling direct to consumer or to our own consumer customers, we try to do it here. And so back to people, like, we have to depend on them to do the right thing. And that's, I think, it's a continual process. It's not always perfect, but growing here is also not a simple process. We follow kind of the serve safe protocol. You know, if you're showing these, and it's tough. You know, Gianna knows, like, you're not feeling good, you can't be in the farm. Now we have layers of things, like certain, like if you have a cold or if you have like a sore throat, you could do some maintenance activities back at HQ, but you're not coming in contact with the crop. So we do follow those. We started with a serve safe best practices, which I think is very appropriate for produce grower. We were fortunate that we have a great program with Penn State Extension around serve safe. We have great teachers and mentors there that helped us kind of incorporate some of these things. But yeah, similar to serve safe is the practice of, you know, every time you're returning to work, you go to a restroom, coming out of a restroom. But most importantly for the farm, you know, every farm has a hand washing station that you're required to wash your hand, and we wear gloves. And the other piece that we kind of layered an additional risk mitigation is also in between crops, changing gloves, washing hands, putting new gloves on. Between tasks, if you're cleaning the floor and you're gonna harvest, be able to, again, change gloves, wash hands. So we don't get in the false sense of security that just because you have gloves, everything's fine. And then also the plant safe, food safe disinfecting liquid that we use for sanitizing everything, we use it intermediately and liberally across anything we do. So even if we don't feel like we need to change gloves, we also disinfect our hands, we spray it, and we use it to do that. So it's kind of a layered approach, but there's the human risk into the crop, but then cross crop, because we're growing multiple crops in the same environment. It's always important that if you're touching the roots of one crop, we're not automatically transmitting something that this crop is immune to another crop that is not, right? So that's something it takes thoughtful, you know, focus on while you're working in the farm as well, right? So these are 5-channel panels. There are 88 of them in a farm, okay? Different crops have different density. Lettuce, when we go to the other farm, you'll see that we only do 3 channels because we want to give it enough space, and also ventilation for lettuce is very important, right? But there's actually three parts to what we grow. There's the panel itself, food safe plastic. There's the foam itself, food safe foam. There's 2 of them per channel, so there's 10. And then there's wicking strip, which this is how the drip irrigation, and how these farms are 97% less water consumed than any other farm, is it very specifically delivers the water and nutrients to where the plugs are touching and they are sitting against this, and the roots are getting the nutrients from. So you really have 1, 2, 3 components that you have to periodically clean. How do you clean it?
I've always wondered that.
You take it off, these foams get pulled out, these strips get pulled out. In our HQ, and I'll show you down when we get back, I'll show you downstairs, they go through a process of, they don't always look this way whenever we pull the crops off. There's roots in there, you know, there's water that's been there, so they have to gently remove all of the root from every one of these foams, okay?
That's a lot of work.
And we have to separate it. We have dedicated washing equipment downstairs that we go through and sanitize it, and we put it through a drying high heat cycle to kill anything as well. But then you have to clean inside these foams. You see, well, this one is pretty clean, but they get pretty mucky in the back, so we have to power wash these. In my opinion, I think it is a solution to the growing trend of inconsistencies in our climate. ask any farmer if their farming seasons have been consistent year after year, and they haven't for a long time. And so I think hydroponics provides us a way to address the never-ending trend of upward growth in our population and need for food, right? And a decreasing number of farmers and arable land. So I think that is where hydroponics comes in, and controlled environment as a layer above that to address those challenges. It's not the solution for all. There are certain crops that just are not viable. But I think it's a mechanism to kind of a tool, a bag of tools in kind of how do we feed the world, right? In different climates, different seasons, and so forth. So try to find someone in that industry that you're going into that can give you an honest advice so that you don't go down a trajectory that takes you capital, time to do that is not doing well. So I think those are the kind of things, don't be afraid to try things, try new things. Just because somebody else hasn't done it doesn't mean it's not something viable or useful to do. And try to find direct feedback from your customer or people who are in this industry and listen to them well.
That's great tip.
Because if somebody's been in the industry they're going to tell you something that you're going to discover one way or another. So why try to go down a track that is not going to work out?
Yeah. This has been a brief tour of GetBlok Farms. We hope you've enjoyed your visit and hopefully learned something too. This video and associated resources were supported by funding from the USDA NIFA Food Safety Outreach Program. Please be in touch with us in the comments, on the web at go.uvm.edu/NECAFs or /Ponics, on social media at NECAFs, or by email at necafs@uvm.edu. We'd love to hear from you.